Your grandfather would have wanted us to work together. Funny. He always told me, they'll come smiling, but watch what they carry behind their backs. Have you ever walked into a room expecting family and found a firing squad with matching smiles? Take a moment to breathe with me. Subscribe, like, and tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is where you are. Now, let's listen to my story journey. 3 weeks after we buried Harold Vance, my grandfather, my mother sent a group text with no punctuation, no explanation, just 5 clipped words. Family meeting Sunday 3 p.m. Be on time. No, please, no details, just a command. And like a fool, I went. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a slideshow of old photos, a joint cry, even just cold meatloaf and forced small talk. What I didn't expect was 2 men in pressed suits waiting in our childhood living room like actors in a courtroom drama. The fireplace wasn't lit, but the tension might as well have been smoke. My mom stood near the window in heels too loud for her age and a smile she borrowed from a PTA fundraiser. "Francis," she said, syrup coating her voice, "meet our family advisors." Advisors? As in legal, financial, psychological warfare specialists? I didn't move. I scanned the room. Karen, my older sister, sat twisted on the couch like she was trying to vanish into her own shoulders. Mason, younger, red-rimmed eyes, kept flexing his fingers like maybe if he kept moving, he wouldn't scream. And Craig, my stepfather, stood with his arms crossed at the fireplace, stiff like he'd practiced the pose in the mirror. My mother, Denise, always did have a flair for the dramatic, but this was rehearsed. "Would you like some coffee?" she asked, too brightly. I placed my leather folder on my lap and crossed one leg over the other. "No," I said. "I'd like to know why I'm here." Her expression twitched. Only once, but it was enough. "Because we're family," she replied, "and your grandfather would have wanted us to work together." That's when I knew. This wasn't a conversation. This wasn't a reconciliation. This was a presentation, and I was the mark. They were here for what they thought was still in play. Harold Vance's empire, Vance Materials, 5 warehouses, 4 states, a fleet of trucks and contracts that lined the walls of his office in framed parchment like war medals. What they didn't realize, not yet, was that I hadn't walked in blind. I was his shadow growing up. While Karen begged for pink rollerblades and Mason clanged train tracks together, I followed him through the echoing halls of his lumber yards. I learned to love the scent of cedar and the scratch of ledger paper. When I was 12, he gave me a calculator instead of a birthday card. "Let's see how your brain handles columns instead of crayons," he said. I adored him. Not because he spoiled me. He didn't. He expected. He demanded. But he saw me, in ways my mother never did. She always hated that bond. Said Grandpa gave me too much credit, not enough correction. Her idea of support was spa retreats labeled emotional recovery and charity galas in borrowed gowns. She once told me, "Your grandfather builds warehouses. I build a life." That life? Leased Mercedes, maxed out cards, investment schemes that sounded like excuses with lipstick. And now, sitting here, it was clear. She hadn't changed. The advisors looked at me like I was a nervous intern. I guess they assumed I'd be caught off guard, desperate for approval. What they didn't know was this. Grandpa didn't leave his empire to me as an accident. It wasn't favoritism. It was intentional, tactical. His last move in a long game only he understood. I saw the cracks before the papers even hit the table. Karen wouldn't look at me. Craig smirked like a man who'd finally cornered the shy niece. My mother, always the lead actress in her own drama, opened her arms like she was welcoming me home. And all I could think was, how long have they been planning this? Grandpa always warned me. They'll test you when I'm gone, smile when they sharpen the knives. I smiled back. Let's get on with it, I said. Mr. Hale, one of the suits, cleared his throat like he was about to recite a wedding vow. Your family has invited us to help mediate some tensions regarding the estate. Estate. Not company, not assets. Estate. Wrapped in velvet and deceit. You mean, you're here to negotiate what's already been decided? I replied. Denise gave me that tight smile again, the kind she used on church committees and wine-tasting waiters. Sweetheart, she said, surely you don't think Grandpa meant to split us apart? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because what they didn't know, not yet, was that I had more than the will. I had the ledgers, the messages, the journal, and one sealed envelope marked in my grandfather's hand. For Francis, if they come for it. The will was read in a room that smelled like expensive regret, polished mahogany, aged leather, and the kind of floral arrangement that screamed, money was spent to appear respectful. We were seated like players at a table none of us chose, and the man at the head, Mr. Holbrook, the estate lawyer, wore a face carved from granite. I sat quietly, arms folded, while Karen dabbed her eyes with a tissue she didn't need. Mason looked like someone had shoved him into a suit he hadn't agreed to wear, and Denise, my mother, was wearing full black silk, oversized sunglasses, and an air of tragic celebrity. Craig sat beside her, legs spread, like he owned the room. The lawyer's voice was steady, deliberate, and merciless. He moved through the bequests like a surgeon, a scholarship donation to Grandpa's college, a small trust for a former warehouse supervisor, a car to a neighbor who used to help haul lumber when trucks were short. Then, to my granddaughter, Francis Allard. The room stilled. I didn't move, not even my breath. I leave the remainder of my estate, including but not limited to all remaining shares in Vance Materials, my personal investment accounts, real property holdings, and personal effects. Silence. The kind that follows explosions. My mother's sunglasses dropped to her chin like dead weight. This is a joke, she snapped. He must have been confused. Read it again. I've read it several times, Mrs. Vance, Mr. Holbrook replied, tone dry. Your father was clear, explicit. Karen gasped, theatrical, as if Grandpa had just risen from the dead to slap her. He loved all of us, she said, voice trembling. He wouldn't pick favorites. Mason said nothing, just rubbed his hands together like he wasn't sure what to do with them. But I wasn't confused. I wasn't shocked. I was bracing. Because I knew what came next wouldn't be about grief. It would be about control. Afterward, in the parking lot, I stood by my car, keys gripped tight, as Denise approached. Her heels clacked like threats on pavement. She was calm now. Weaponized calm. Just sign everything over, she said softly. I'll divide it fairly. I'll make sure everyone's taken care of. I didn't respond at first. I just watched her. The way you watch a tide coming in. It doesn't matter how pretty the wave is. If you're not ready, it'll pull you under. I need time to think, I said. Her eyes sharpened. This isn't yours, Francis. It's ours. Family money, family legacy. That's not what Grandpa said. The mask slipped. Just a flicker. He was manipulated, she snapped. You spent too much time with him. He wasn't well. But he had been. 6 months before he died, I sat in his study, and he poured me a neat scotch. Told me the will had been updated, that it was going to cause chaos, that I needed to remember why he built it all in the first place. They'll say it's about fairness, he told me, but what they really mean is access. That night, the messages started. Karen first. Please don't let this ruin everything. We're still your family. Then Denise. You'll understand once you have kids. Family comes first. Then Mason. A single word text. Why? By morning, my voicemail was full. Old PTA moms, my mother's friends from her jewelry parties, even a neighbor I hadn't spoken to in 15 years. Francis, this is so disappointing. Disappointment. That was the word they all used. Not surprise, not sadness, not loss. Disappointment. Like I had failed an expectation I never agreed to meet. But they didn't know what Grandpa and I had actually built. The hours I spent beside him reading contracts. The nights he called me when a supplier defaulted. The Saturdays I gave up to visit sites because he said, "You can't lead what you haven't walked." I didn't win a lottery. I earned it. One spreadsheet at a time. But none of that mattered to them. Because in their minds, the money was always supposed to trickle downward. Through Denise. Like holy water. 2 days later, Mason showed up at my apartment. No call. Just him on the security feed, hands stuffed in his jacket, face pale. I opened the door. "I'm not here to argue," he said. "Okay." He looked up. His eyes were tired but clear. "Mom's losing it. She's already calling realtors. Says she needs to refinance the house before you freeze the assets." I blinked. "I haven't frozen anything." "She doesn't believe that." A pause. "I just wanted to warn you. She's planning something." Then he turned and left. No hug. No handshake. Just footsteps that echoed like guilt. That night, Liam, my boyfriend, brought takeout and silence. He held my hand as I stared at my food. I hadn't cried. I hadn't screamed. I was past the point where emotions felt helpful. "I want you to meet someone," he said gently. "Her name's Angela Dwyer. Probate lawyer. She's not for fighting unless you need one. She's for protection." I nodded. The next morning, I called Angela. Her office sat above a flower shop. No intimidating glass walls. No marble. Just books, plants, and quiet. I told her everything. She listened. No interruptions. Just a slow nod at the end. "You're already in the middle of a coordinated pressure campaign," she said. "Classic guilt playbook. But based on the will, and what you've told me, you're on solid ground." "I don't want to fight them," I said. "I just want it to stop." "Then we prepare, just in case." I agreed. It sounded easy. Then my phone buzzed. A photo. My mother shopping for patio furniture. Caption: "Retail therapy through grief. Self-care." An hour later, another message. "I can't pay my utility bill." That was the moment I started printing everything. Every text. Every voicemail. Because I wasn't just protecting what I inherited. I was protecting what he built. The second invitation came like the first. A text from my mother. No greeting, no explanation. Sunday, 3 p.m., house. Bring your paperwork. It was less an invitation, more a commandment. No emoji, no smiley face. Just a time-stamped threat wearing its best Sunday shoes. Angela didn't like it. "This feels like an ambush," she said over coffee. "And ambushes are rarely about resolution." "I know," I replied. "But I'm not walking in blind." She offered to come. I declined. "I need to face them myself," I told her. "But I want you nearby." "One word," she said, "and I'll be at the door in 60 seconds." I arrived at exactly 2:59 p.m. Not early, not late. Calculated. The house looked the same. Neat shrubs, powder blue shutters, the porch swing no one ever sat on. But there was a faint trace of my mother's perfume on the front steps. She'd been out here recently, probably practicing her expressions in the reflection of the glass. She opened the door before I could knock. "Francis!" she beamed. Hair freshly curled, eyes too bright. Right on time. The living room had been rearranged, deliberate, unnatural. Karen sat perched on the edge of the couch, her spine rigid, hands white-knuckled in her lap. Mason beside her, eyes down. My stepfather Craig stood near the fireplace, arms crossed again like a bouncer outside a club he didn't own. And then, there they were. The suits. Two men in dark blazers seated in the armchairs that once belonged to Grandpa and Grandma Vance. They had legal pads, briefcases, and wedding bands on their left hands, trying to appear relatable. Their smiles were wide, professional, and completely meaningless. "This is Mr. Hale and Mr. Darnell," my mother said grandly, gesturing like a magician unveiling the world's most boring trick. "They've kindly offered to help us untangle this unfortunate misunderstanding." I nodded. Didn't shake hands, didn't smile. One chair was left for me, a straight-backed wooden thing placed directly opposite everyone else. Interrogation seating? Deliberate. I sat without a word, placed my leather folder on my lap. My fingertips rested on it like armor. "Would you like some coffee?" she asked again, like this was a tea party and not a siege. "I'm fine," I said. "Let's get to it." Mr. Hale cleared his throat. "We're here today because your family is deeply concerned about the emotional strain this situation has caused," he began, rehearsed and smooth. "No one wants a prolonged dispute, especially when your grandfather's intention was clearly for the family to remain unified." I let the silence stretch. He flinched first. "He wrote a will," I said. "We're not disputing that, sweetheart," my mother interjected, all honey and stage lighting. "But surely you can agree that splitting everything would be more harmonious." "Harmony wasn't in the will either," I said. Mr. Darnell opened his briefcase and slid a thick stack of documents across the table toward me. "This is a voluntary redistribution agreement," he explained. "You retain a healthy percentage, 20%. The rest goes back to the family, where it's always been understood to belong." "Understood by whom?" Karen finally looked up. "Grandpa was sick, Francis. He wasn't thinking clearly. He thought you'd know what to do." "I do know what to do," I said calmly. "Which is why I'm not signing that." Mason shifted beside her. "Mom says if we don't sort this now, we might lose the house." "Why is that?" I asked. Still calm. Measured. "Did someone take out a second mortgage again?" My mother's expression cracked. Just for a second. Then reassembled. "Francis, don't do this." Mr. Hale cut in, trying to regain control. "It would be unfortunate if this went to court. Claims of undue influence could muddy the estate's reputation." There it was. The threat. Soft-shoed. Dressed up in legalese and gentle condescension. I placed my hand gently on the folder. "Before I respond," I said, "I'd like to clarify one thing." I turned to Craig. "6 months ago, you told Grandpa's nurse that you'd already put a deposit down on a property in Naples. Was that with inheritance money you hadn't yet received?" Craig blinked. I didn't wait. "I have a recording," I continued, "and a paper trail." My mother's mouth fell open, then snapped shut. I opened the folder and laid out the first sheet, a scan from one of Grandpa's ledgers, his handwriting clear and dated. Loan to Denise, $30,000, claimed for Mason's college. Later heard, cruise, last time. Then I placed a printed Instagram photo beside it. My mother, sipping champagne aboard a cruise ship, her smile stretched wide. Caption, "Deserved this." Blessed, I looked up. "Still feel like drawing up paperwork today?" No one answered. My mother stood so suddenly her chair scraped against the hardwood. "You ungrateful little—" I slid another paper across the table. "May 8th, I said. "You told Grandpa that Karen needed emergency dental surgery. He gave you 20 grand. I turned to Karen. "You were in Scottsdale that weekend. Spa package. I remember the monogrammed robe." Karen went pale. Craig muttered something under his breath. "This is low," he said, digging through a dead man's notes to twist his memory against his family. "He wasn't confused," I said. "He was exhausted, and he kept records because he knew this would happen." I reached into the folder again. This time, I pulled out a sealed envelope. Faded, Thick. Grandpa's handwriting on the front. For Francis. If they come for it. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The suits shifted in their chairs. The smugness drained from their expressions. Mr. Hale adjusted his tie. Miss Allard, we were told this would be a cooperative conversation. It was never going to be that, I replied. And you're not legal counsel, are you? You're pressure brokers. I turned to my mother. You didn't tell them I already retained a real lawyer, did you? Their silence confirmed it. She's in a car outside, I added. One text and she's at the door. The men stood in unison. We'll excuse ourselves, one muttered, snapping his briefcase shut. Mrs. Vance, we were unaware of any pending legal representation. My mother didn't look at me. Her voice dropped into a hiss. This isn't over. Actually, I said, standing. It is. I gathered my papers slowly. I'm not signing anything. I won't enable your spending, and I won't let you rewrite the past just because the present no longer suits you. You owe us. I owe Grandpa. That's who I'm honoring. Then Mason stood. Everyone froze. Even Craig. I didn't know, Mason said quietly, about the cruise, or the spa, or that you used my name to take money from him. He turned to my mother. You said Francis was selfish, but you lied about everything. Mason, sit down. No. The word hit like a crack in glass. He looked at me. Can I come with you? I nodded. Let's go. Craig stepped forward. You little... I raised my phone. This conversation's been recorded. He stopped. We left in silence, past the people who once called themselves family, past the plans they'd made. Angela was already out of her car when we stepped onto the porch. You okay? She asked. He's with me, I said. And we're done here. Behind us, the front door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame, but for once, I didn't look back. Mason didn't say much on the ride back. He sat stiffly in the passenger seat, jacket still zipped like he wasn't sure he was staying or just passing through. Every few minutes, his fingers curled tighter around the seatbelt. He didn't look at me, didn't ask where we were going, just stared straight ahead as if there might still be time to rewrite everything behind us. When we reached my apartment, I unlocked the door and stepped aside. He didn't hesitate. You're on the couch, I said gently. It folds out. Sheets are clean. He nodded. Thanks. We didn't talk that night. I made tea. He drank it. I scrolled through emails. He stared at the ceiling, still gripping the edge of his mug like it might float away if he let go. And maybe it should have felt awkward. This silence, this proximity. But it didn't. Not exactly. It wasn't a pause. It was a quiet recovery. The stillness after the earthquake before anyone starts sweeping the glass. The next morning, I woke early, dressed in jeans and a hoodie. No makeup. Just purpose. I didn't tell Mason where I was going. Just left a note on the table beside the empty tea mug and his half-folded hoodie. Be back before lunch. If you need anything, fridge is full. Then I drove. Back to the house. His house. The one I now legally owned but hadn't touched since the funeral. I unlocked the front door. The air hit me like a memory, dust and cedar, sun-warmed hardwood and something underneath it all, still and waiting. His study was just as he left it, desk organized, shelves alphabetized, a single photo of us on the corner, me at 12, him holding up a clipboard, both of us squinting in the warehouse light. I opened the center drawer. His journal was there, leather-bound, worn edges, heavy with things unsaid. I flipped through it slowly. Dates, contracts, sketches of shelving designs, vendor contact notes. And near the back, something new I hadn't noticed the first time. A margin note. His handwriting, thinner than usual, but still sharp. Francis has what Denise never learned: restraint, clarity. If she chooses to lead, this business may survive me. If she chooses to love it, it may outlive us both. My hands trembled. Not from fear, from the weight of it. He didn't leave me the company to give me power. He left it because I was the only one who understood what it cost to build. I sat there a long time, breathing, remembering the sound of his voice when he used to walk the floor, shouting over forklifts and nail guns. Remembering how he insisted on knowing the names of every employee's kids, how he never trusted a balance sheet that didn't match the gut. Later that day, I met Angela for lunch, a quiet little cafe where the napkins came folded like origami and the coffee tasted like someone still cared about beans. I showed her the journal. She scanned the pages with quiet reverence, like it was a holy book. "This changes everything," she said. "I know. We can file it with the court. Supplementary documentation. It confirms intent, reinforces your legal standing, and closes most remaining loopholes." I nodded. "Do it." She pulled out her tablet. "And Mason?" she asked, not looking up. I hesitated then. "We're setting up a trust. Small? Educational? Just enough to support his degree without tying him to anyone's leash." Angela smiled, signing her initials on the screen. "That's clean, fair, generous." Back home, Mason was on the couch, flipping through one of Grandpa's old trade magazines, the kind that still ran ads for diesel compressors and safety goggles with 3-inch foam. "You know," I said from the doorway, "Grandpa always wanted to expand into green materials, eco-lumber, thermal concrete. But the board wouldn't move fast enough." Mason looked up. "I remember," he said. He used to rant about it at dinner. Something about the industry being stuck in the sawdust age. I smiled. "What would you say to an internship?" He blinked. "Real work," I added. "No shortcuts, no family pass." "You serious?" "Completely." He didn't answer right away. Just stared at me like he didn't know if this was forgiveness or a setup. Then slowly, cautiously, a smile broke across his face. "Yeah," he said. "I'd like that." We clinked mugs of cold tea like it was champagne. In that moment, it wasn't about rebuilding a family. It was about building something better, something honest, something real. 1 year later, I stand at the loading dock of Vance Materials with my sleeves rolled, clipboard in hand, and the scent of sawdust and possibility in the air. The warehouse buzzes around me, forklifts moving pallets, orders being called out in shorthand, laughter echoing near the break room. It's not quiet, it's not glamorous, but it's alive again. For the first time since Grandpa passed, this place feels like it has a heartbeat. I didn't just reopen the company, I rewired it. Stripped down the board, cleared out the leeches, hired people who remembered that business isn't built on debt and dinners. It's built on work, and sweat, and trust. Mason now runs the eco division. He's balancing part-time school and full-time leadership. A miracle, really. The kid who once hid behind our mother's promises is now out there in safety goggles, pitching clients on recycled composite blends and thermal foundations. He uses words like carbon offset and modular retrofitting, but what I hear is, "I believe in this. That's everything." Some days I still expect a knock at the door. A new tactic from Denise. A new voice trying to convince me I'm being unfair, that we're still family, that Grandpa would want unity, not division. But the silence from her zip code has been deafening. She disappeared somewhere south. Rumor has it she's living off the last of Craig's investments, throwing art parties and pretending none of this happened. Occasionally, I receive messages through secondhand sources. Guilt delivered in the voices of others. "Your mother isn't doing well. She's heartbroken you cut her off. She talks about you all the time, but I don't respond. I don't need to." Because healing doesn't always come with reunions or apologies. Sometimes healing is silence, boundaries, clarity. Karen, on the other hand, Karen reaches out. Little things. A forwarded article about lumber tax laws. A birthday card. Once, a voicemail with just music. One of Grandpa's favorite jazz standards, scratchy and low. I haven't opened the door wide, but I haven't shut it either. Some wounds don't require stitches, they just need time. Angela checks in every few weeks. We've since filed everything. Journal, will, witness statements. The legal roots are deeper than anyone can pull. Vance Materials is now officially in my name, my hands, and my vision. The hardest part? It's not what I had to fight. It's what I had to let go of. The hope that they'd ever understand. The dream that legacy meant the same thing to all of us. It doesn't. For some, legacy is a photo on the mantle and a check in the mail. For me, legacy is every decision I make now. Which vendor I hire, which policy I back. Who gets a second chance? Like Mason. One afternoon, I find him in the break room, surrounded by blueprints. He's mid-call, explaining our value retention on our new eco-concrete blend to a skeptical client. No, sir, he says firmly. It's not just marketing, it's measurable. I'll send over the specs. He catches my eye and grins. That night, I stop by the old house again. Not to visit ghosts, but to collect a few things. In Grandpa's study, I open that same drawer and pull out the photo frame. The one of us in the warehouse. I bring it back to my new office, set it on my desk beside a fresh stack of vendor bids and a half-drunk cup of tea. This is where he'd want it to be. Still watching. Still guiding. Still trusted. Because in the end, it wasn't about favoritism. It wasn't about inheritance. It was about alignment. He gave the company to the person who didn't need it to feel powerful. He gave it to the one who would protect it. Not because it was a prize, but because it was a promise. And even now, when the lights go down and the forklifts fall silent, I walk the floor the same way he used to. Slow, deliberate, shoulders back. It's not just a habit, it's a legacy in motion. There's something eerie about walking a space built by someone you love, long after they're gone. The echoes don't quite bounce the same. The silence has different weight. But the fingerprints remain. In the layout, in the smell of old concrete and pine, in the systems they left behind that still stubbornly work like clockwork because someone once cared enough to make them last. I start most mornings the same way. 6:45 a.m., warehouse lights humming awake, coffee in hand, slow walk through the east corridor. It's ritual now. Not nostalgia, not grief, just alignment. I keep Grandpa's journal in a locked drawer in my office, not because it needs to be protected, but because I do. On the days when things get complicated, board decisions, supply chain delays, payroll hiccups, I pull it out. Let my fingers trace the pages he once filled. Some people meditate. I read ledger margins. And it works. It reminds me why I'm here. It reminds me who I am. And who I'm not. I am not Denise Vance. I do not smile to manipulate. I do not spend to feel whole. And I do not build relationships like sandcastles, easily washed away when the tide changes. For a long time, that was the hardest part. Letting go of the idea that she might one day come around, that she might finally look me in the eye and say, "You were right. I was wrong. I should have chosen you instead of trying to break you." But I've stopped needing that, because even if she said it, I wouldn't believe her. Some truths come not from words, but from absence. Her silence has been louder than any apology could be, and it's taught me more than her presence ever did. Meanwhile, Mason is thriving. He moved into a small apartment a few blocks from the warehouse. It's not fancy, secondhand couch, cracked tile in the kitchen, but he's proud of it. Pays his own bills, shops with a list, brings lunch from home. You'd think he'd been living this way his whole life. But I remember. I remember the scared kid who used to flinch every time Mom raised her voice. I remember how she'd parade him at charity events like a shiny toy. My son Mason just got into AP chemistry. Isn't he brilliant? And then guilt him into giving her his student refund check 2 months later. He's not that boy anymore. Now he's a man who shows up early to work and stays late not to prove something, but because he wants to. He asks questions, he makes mistakes, he owns them. And every once in a while he catches my eye during meetings. Not because he's nervous, but because he wants to know if I saw what he did. I always do. We still don't talk much about the day we left the house together. It hangs between us like a photo no one takes down, not because it hurts, but because it changed us, solidified something unspoken. Trust, maybe, or the shared knowledge that sometimes blood isn't thicker. Sometimes it's just messier. Angela filed everything, the journal, the statements, even Grandpa's envelope. The probate court reviewed it all and confirmed what we already knew. The estate is mine, legally, irrevocably. The business is mine too, not to own, but to steward. And that word matters, because there's a difference between inheriting and carrying forward. I don't drive a Mercedes. I drive a used Ford F-150 that still smells like drywall. I didn't renovate the office, I repurposed it. I kept Grandpa's mug. I kept the landline phone on the front desk that no one uses but I still answer sometimes out of habit. I kept the corkboard where he used to pin birthday cards for the employees' kids. Because this place, it's not a monument, it's a machine. A living, breathing ecosystem made of hands and heartbeats. And I won't let it rust under the weight of people who only wanted the gloss. One night after we finish inventory, Mason and I sit outside on the loading dock. The sun's low, bleeding gold across the gravel. He tosses a pebble against the concrete and says, "Do you ever think she'll come back?" He doesn't say her name. He doesn't have to. I sip my lukewarm coffee. Maybe. And if she does? If she comes with truth, maybe I'll listen, I say. But if she comes with conditions, I'll show her the door. He nods. That's all. That's enough. We sit in silence a while longer. Not heavy, just quiet, healing still. And beneath the scent of sawdust and the hum of distant trucks, I feel it in my bones. This is what Grandpa meant. Not inheritance, but resilience. Not comfort, but clarity. Not family, but integrity. A year later, I'm standing where it all began. Not the boardroom, not the lawyer's office, not even the warehouse. I'm back in Grandpa's study, only now it's mine. The desk is no longer a relic. It's a workstation. The air no longer smells like grief. It smells like cedar oil and ballpoint ink. There's still dust in the corners. Some legacies shouldn't be polished too clean. I sit in the old leather chair and lean back, eyes closed, listening. Not for ghosts, but for grounding. There's a letter I keep folded in the journal. Not the one Grandpa left sealed. That one I filed with Angela, untouched. This one he handed to me 2 years before he passed, after a storm shut down the power and we ended up playing cards by candlelight. He'd written it in pencil on the back of an invoice. At the time, I didn't understand why it mattered. Now I read it every time I question myself. Francis, power will test you. So will silence. So will those who call you family when what they really mean is obedient. You don't owe anyone your peace. You earn that alone, in the dark, when no one's looking. Keep your peace. Build with it. He knew. He always knew. And that's the thing about people like my mother. They mistake silence for weakness. They think composure is a lack of power. They expect you to fold because folding is what they do, into comfort, into lies, into whatever narrative lets them escape the weight of truth. But I didn't fold. I didn't freeze the accounts out of spite. I didn't destroy the records out of anger. I kept them. Because the truth doesn't need to scream, it just needs to stand. And when the time came, it did. Mason's finishing his degree this fall. He's already designing a new product line, composite siding made from recycled material, perfect for storm-prone coastal homes. He named it Herald Guard. And when I asked why, he shrugged and said, "Felt right." I didn't cry, but my chest felt like it might crack open from pride. Karen visited once, showed up unannounced. I found her sitting on the porch swing. Yes, the one no one ever used, holding a framed photo of the four of us from some long-forgotten summer. We talked. Not about the will, not about the past. Just about the flowers Grandpa used to plant in the backyard, and how Mom never really watered them but always claimed credit when they bloomed. It was cautious, but it was something. I didn't invite her in, but I didn't tell her to leave. We're figuring it out. Some inheritances come wrapped in cash, others come wrapped in consequences. Mine came with both. But the wealth he gave me wasn't just in bank accounts or real estate deeds. It was in restraint. The ability to say no when yes would cost me too much. It was in clarity. The difference between being needed and being used. It was in boundaries. Knowing that just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they share your values. And most of all, it was in trust. He trusted me to carry what he built. And I did. But I didn't just preserve it. I changed it. I led it. I loved it. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because it mattered. Because it deserved to be more than a trophy for people who only wanted to cash it in. This company, this family, this future, it's no longer about surviving what they did. It's about building what I choose. Every nail, every contract, every decision. And when people ask how I kept it all together, I tell them the truth. I didn't. I tore it apart first. The illusion, the fear, the story I was handed. Then I built something real. And now every night when I close the office, turn off the lights, and walk to my truck beneath the hum of street lamps and the scent of pine lingering in my hair, I sleep. Deeply. Peacefully. Because I chose what was right, not what was easy. And because my grandfather once said I would. He was right. I do.